Chapter 6 Minerva, 1949. What do you want, Minerva Mirabal? Summer. I know the rumor that got started once I'd been living at home a few years, that I didn't like men. It's true that I never paid much attention to the ones around here, but it wasn't that I didn't like them. I just didn't know I was looking at what I wanted. For one thing, my nose was always in a book. Love was something I had read would come. The man I'd love would look like the poet in a frontispiece, pale and sad with a pen in his hand. For another thing, Papa discouraged boyfriends. I was his treasure, he'd say, patting his lap as if I were a girl in a jumper instead of a woman of 23 in the slacks he objected to my wearing in public. Papa, I'd say, I'm too old for that. One time he offered me anything if I would sit on his lap. Just come here and whisper it in my ear. His voice was a little thick from drinking. I sat right down and swooped to my prize. I want to go to the university, Papa. Please. Now, he said, as if I were all worked up about something. You wouldn't want to leave your old Papa, would you? But Papa, you've got Mama, I argued. His face went blank. We both listened for Mama stirring in the front of the house near where we sat. Maria Teresa was off at school. Dede was newly married. Patria 2 times a mother. And here I was, a grown woman, sitting on my father's lap. Your mother and I, he began, but thought better of continuing. Then he added, we need you around. 3 years cooped at home since I'd graduated from Immaculada, and I was ready to scream with boredom. The worst part was getting newsy letters from Elsa and Sinita in the capital. They were taking a theory of errors class that would make Sor Asunción's hair stand on end, even under her wimple. They had seen Tintan in Tender Little Pumpkins and had been to the country club to hear Alberti and his band. And there were so many nice-looking men in the capital. I'd get restless with jealousy when Papa brought their letters back from the Salcedo post office. I'd jump in the jeep and roar off into the countryside, my foot pressing heavily down on the gas as if speed could set me free. I'd drive further and further out, pretending to myself that I was running away to the capital. But something always made me turn the car around and head back home. Something I'd seen from the corner of my eye. One afternoon, I was on one of these getaway rampages, racing down the small side roads that spiderweb our property. Near the northeast cacao groves, I saw the Ford parked in front of a small yellow house. I tried to figure out what campesino family lived there, but I couldn't say I had ever met them. So I made it my business to take that back road frequently, keeping an eye out. Every time I drove the Ford, these raggedy girls came running after me, holding out their hands, calling for mints. I studied them. There were 3 that ran to the road whenever they heard the car. A 4th one sometimes came in the arms of the oldest. 4 girls, I checked, 3 in panties and the baby naked. One time, I stopped at the side of the road and stared at their Mirabal eyes. Who is your father? I asked point blank. They had been bold, clamoring kids a moment before. Now, spoken to by a lady in a car, they hung their heads and looked at me from the corners of their eyes. Do you have a brother? I asked more gently. It was a delicious revenge to hear them murmur, No, señora. Papa was not going to get the son he wanted after all. A little later, the woman came sauntering from her house, her hair just combed out from rollers and too much of something on her face. When she saw me, her face fell. She scolded the kids as if that was what she'd come for. I told you not to bother the cars. They're not bothering anything, I defended them, caressing the baby's cheek. The woman was looking me over. I suppose she was taking inventory, what I had, what she didn't have, doing the simple arithmetic and, perhaps a few days later, exacting some new promise from Papa. Everywhere I looked, I kept seeing those 4 raggedy girls with Papa's and my own deep-set eyes staring back at me. Give me, they cried. But when I asked them, what do you want? They stood, mute, their mouths hanging open, not knowing where to start. Had they asked me the same thing, I would have stared back, mute, too. What did I want? I didn't know anymore. 3 years stuck in Ojo de Agua, and I was like that princess put to sleep in the fairy tale. I read and complained and argued with Dede, but all that time I was snoring away. When I met Leo, it was as if I woke up. The givens, all I'd been taught, fell away like so many covers when you sit up in bed. Now when I asked myself, what do you want, Minerva Mirabal? I was shocked to find I didn't have an answer. All I knew was I was not falling in love, no matter how deserving I thought Leo was. So what, I'd argue with myself. What's more important, romance or revolution? But a little voice kept saying, both, I want both. Back and forth my mind went, weaving a yes by night and unraveling it by day to a no. As always happens, your life decides for you anyway. Leo announced he was seeking asylum out of the country. I was relieved that circumstances would be resolving things between us. Still, when he left, I was hurt that he hadn't even said goodbye. Then I started worrying that his silence meant he had been caught. Out of the corners of my eyes, I kept seeing Leo himself. He was not a pretty sight. His body was bruised and broken as if he had endured all the tortures in La Fortaleza he had ever described to me. I was sure I was having premonitions that Leo had not escaped after all. Mama, of course, noticed the tightening in my face. My bad headaches and asthma attacks worried her. You need rest, she prescribed one afternoon and sent me to bed in Papa's room, the coolest in the house. He was off in the Ford for his afternoon review of the farm. I lay in that mahogany bed, tossing this way and that, unable to sleep. Then, something I hadn't planned. I got up and tried the door of the armoire. It was locked, which wasn't all that strange, as the hardware was always getting stuck. Using one of my bobby pins, I popped the inside spring and the door sprang open. I ran my hand along Papa's clothes, releasing his smell in the room. I stared at his fancy new guayaberas and started going through the pockets. In the inside pocket of his dress jacket, I found a packet of papers and pulled them out. Prescriptions for his medicines, a bill for a Panama hat he'd been wearing around the farm, a new important look for him, a bill from El Gallo for 7 yards of gingham, a girl's fabric, an invitation from the National Palace to some party. Then 4 letters addressed to me from Leo. I read them through hungrily. He hadn't heard from me about his proposal to leave the country. What proposal? He had arranged for me to come to the Colombian embassy. I should let him know through his cousin Mario. He was waiting for my answer. Next letter. Still no answer. He complained in a 3rd letter. In the final letter, he wrote that he was leaving that afternoon on the diplomatic pouch plane. He understood it was too big a step for me at the moment. Someday in the future, maybe. He could only hope. It seemed suddenly that I'd missed a great opportunity. My life would have been nobler if I had followed Leo. But how could I have made the choice when I hadn't even known about it? I forgot my earlier ambivalence, and I blamed Papa for everything. His young woman, his hurting Mama, his cooping me up while he went gallivanting around. My hands were shaking so bad that it was hard to fold the letters into their envelopes. I stuffed them in my pocket, but his bills and correspondence I put back. I left the doors of the armoire gaping open. I wanted him to know he had been found out. Minutes later, I was roaring away in the jeep without a word to Mama. What would I have said? I'm going to find my good-for-nothing father and drag him back? I knew where to find him all right. Now that Papa was doing so well, he had bought a second car, a Jeep. I knew damn well he wasn't reviewing the fields if he had taken the Ford, not the Jeep. I headed straight for that yellow house. When I got there, those 4 girls looked up, startled. After all, the man they always expected was already there, the car parked in the back where it couldn't be seen from the road. I turned into the dirt path and crashed into the Ford, making the bumper curl up and shattering the window in back. Then I came down on that horn until he appeared, shirtless and furious, in the doorway. He took one look at me and got as pale as an olive-skinned man can get. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. "What do you want?" he said at last. I heard the little girls crying, and I realized my own face was wet with tears. When he came forward, I gave a warning honk and wildly backed out of the path and into the road. A pickup coming around the curve veered and ran into the ditch. Plantains, oranges, mangoes, yucca spilling all over the road. That didn't stop me, no. I stepped on the gas. From the corner of my eye I saw him, a figure growing smaller and smaller until I left him behind me. When I got home, Mama met me at the door. She eyed me, and she must have known. "Next time you don't leave this house without saying where you're going." We both knew her scold was meaningless. She hadn't even asked where I'd been. Papa returned that night, his face drawn with anger. He ate his supper in silence as if his review of the farm had not gone well. As soon as I could without making Mama more suspicious, I excused myself. I had a throbbing headache, I explained, heading for my room. In a little while, I heard his knock. "I want to see you outside." His voice through the door was commanding. I threw water on my face, combed my hand through my hair, and went out to Papa. He led me down the drive past the dented Ford into the dark garden. The moon was a thin, bright machete, cutting its way through patches of clouds. By its sharp light I could see my father stop and turn to face me. With his shrinking and my height, we were now eye to eye. There was no warning it was coming. His hand slammed into the side of my face as it never had before on any part of my body. I staggered back, stunned more with the idea of his having hit me than with the pain exploding in my head. "That's to remind you that you owe your father some respect." "I don't owe you a thing," I said. My voice was as sure and commanding as his. "You've lost my respect." I saw his shoulders droop. I heard him sigh. Right then and there, it hit me harder than his slap. I was much stronger than Papa. Mama was much stronger. He was the weakest one of all. It was he who would have the hardest time living with the shabby choices he'd made. He needed our love. "I hid them to protect you," he said. At first, I didn't know what he was talking about. Then I realized he must have discovered the letters missing from his coat pocket. "I know of at least 3 of Virgilio's friends who have disappeared." So he was going to pass this off as my fury over his taking my mail. And I knew that in order to go on living under the same roof, I would have to pretend this was our true difference. That fancy invitation I found in Papa's pocket caused another uproar, this time from Mama. It was an invitation to a private party being thrown by Trujillo himself in one of his secluded mansions 3 hours away. A handwritten note at the end requested that La Señorita Minerva Mirabal not fail to show. Now that Papa had become rich, he got invited to a lot of official parties and functions. I always went along as Papa's partner since Mama wouldn't go. "Who wants to see an old woman?" she complained. "Come on, Mama," I argued. "You're in your prime. A mujerona of 51. I snapped my fingers, jazzing up Mama's life. But the truth was, Mama looked old, even older than Papa, with his dapper new hat and his linen guayaberas and his high black boots and a debonair cane that seemed more a self-important prop than a walking aid. Her hair had gone steel gray, and she pulled it back in a severe bun that showed off the long-suffering look on her face. This time, though, Mama didn't want me to go either. The note at the end scared her. This wasn't an official do, but something personal. In fact,